right, so now we're gonna kind of move into the Turkish getup. So Mike, go ahead and take us through the basic steps. Obviously, you're gonna be on the ground and starting in that position, and there's a bit of a rollover. There's controlling the weight with your shoulder properly. There's a lot of different movements going on. So why don't you just start with how to get onto the ground, what position we're gonna start in.
Sure, okay. So the first position we're gonna go over is the roll and the press. So in order to set up properly, usually what I like saying is knees at 90, hips at 90. Okay, that's gonna be your start position for the lower body. Then in terms of hand insertion, always with hand insertion, what you wanna do is you wanna drive, so this is the window, right? Okay. For hand insertion, you wanna drive your hand through the window as deeply as possible so the handle forms essentially like a 45-degree angle into the heel of the palm. Okay, if it doesn't do that and you see people grabbing like this, what will tend to happen, especially as they get fatigued either through load or through repetition or through just time under tension, you'll tend to see a bent wrist position. So this is absolutely not what you want. This is gonna cause a lot of shoulder instability as well as gonna pre-fatigue the flexors of the forearms. So drive your hand through as deeply as you can so there's no space between the base of the heel of the palm, the forearm, and the handle. Okay, so that is a good position right there. So now my wrist is gonna be neutral throughout the entirety of the movement. After that, I'll wrap my fingers over and grab, not crushing grip, but just enough so that the kettlebell securely and I can activate all the stabilizers of the shoulder through the grip, which is really important. So that's how you set up the lower body and the hand position. Now from here, with the free hand, I'm gonna grab over the top. Okay, so I'm gonna have two hands to assist. I'm not gonna roll over and just go into the motion, and that's gonna tweak my shoulder. So I wanna use the opposite hand, and I wanna pretend like this is 48 kilos. So bring it in close to the body, opposite hand on top. Now I'm gonna pull it in with two hands into the chest and into the abdomen as I simultaneously roll over to the back. So the first step would be here.
So you're just basically trying to get as close to the body as possible, allowing the body to do most of the work, keeping and cradling that load.
Exactly, perfect. I'll do one more here. Then once my feet are planted, my shoulder is set, which means it's set away from the ears, okay? I can turn on my lat a little bit. Now from here, especially when the load's heavy, or when you're first learning the movement, I like to press with two hands. So you could go into a single arm press, but for right now, I'm gonna press with two hands, and then I release, okay? So after I roll, come to here, press. The shoulder is still away, the lat's active, the grip's nice and tight. Now, from this position, throughout the entirety of the movement, you wanna maintain verticality of the arm, okay? So you always wanna be pushing in the vertical or upward direction towards the ceiling. Once the kettlebell is nice stable in this position and the elbow's locked, which is also gonna maintain throughout the entirety of the movement, then whatever hand has the kettlebell, that is the knee that's bent, okay? In terms of how far away should the heel be from the butt, typically, usually about a foot, but you'll have to play with that. If it's too close, as you transition to the next steps, it'll kind of get jammed up. So find a good position, but for right now, let's just say about a foot away, heel to butt. Now, if I were outstretched, I would be in almost like a starfish position. Once I pack here, this is 45 degree and the arm is mirrored. So this is where I'm gonna be when I start the motion.
Okay. Now, are you placing pressure on the heel, or is this all part of just tensing that entire leg?
So in terms of the same leg that's loaded, this will be planted because as I go into the elbow post position, I'm gonna be pushing off this leg.
Okay.
In terms of the free leg, I'm extending through the heel as much as I can, lengthening that position. Okay, so that's step one.
All right. So now step two, we're gonna progress. Okay, now, are you mainly focused on contracting and tensing the abs to then produce the initial movement up off of the ground? And, okay, go ahead.
So that's a great question. In terms of, so what I tend to hear a lot is squeeze the abdominal as tightly as you can, just like you're bracing for a punch. Or what I always like to say, and this is something I've learned in sport with all movements, What you want to achieve is optimal activation. Not too much, not too low. Yes, the abs need to be active. Yes, the lats need to be active. Yes, the obliques need to be active, but the key is optimal engagement, okay? Tension just for the sake of tension isn't gonna accomplish much. But yes, tension is related to strength.
Tension.
Exactly, so focused tension, optimal activation of the muscles that we're trying to work right now.
Okay, great.
In order to stabilize the load safely.
Okay, so that's step one. Now walk us through step two. Okay, widen out.
Okay, step two. So with this leg and this arm, I'm gonna drive into the ground, into the elbow. What I'm gonna try and do is I'm gonna try and roll up to the elbow. I'm gonna do this a few times and give you a few cues on each one. So from here, I'm not driving, even though I'm focused on verticality of the kettlebell and of the arm, I'm not driving straight up, because if I were driving straight up in a straight exact line, it'd be very hard for me to get up on the elbow.
Okay.
It's actually a roll diagonally forward and up.
Okay.
Okay?
And I notice your hand is a bit forward from your chest, so the bell's really like in line with your chest there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And it won't be right over the elbow, but what you want to achieve in this position, the eyes should always be looking at the kettlebell. And if you look at this bottom shoulder, I'm driving it away from the ground. I never want to be collapsed in this position. I want to be pushing up, reaching up, open chest in a long open neck position.
Okay, and I noticed in the transition there, you weren't placing a lot of pressure on your hand. Okay, so that was intentional?
You can do either. I mean, it's good to have, to feel the ground, but I would say it's not absolutely necessary.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's position two, elbow post. Position three, I'm going to keep driving up. Okay? The back elbow, where this hand should be, can vary, but ideally you want it, relatively speaking, close to the hip. Now, just like the elbow position, you don't want to be collapsed in here. You always want to be driving up, a long open neck position, and the shoulder away from the ears. From here, I'm going to lift the hips. If you look at the direction of the hips, they're not pointed straight up, they're pointed almost at a 45. Okay, shoulders are away from the ears. Now from here, I've got enough space underneath me to draw the leg back, so that way it's underneath the hips. Okay, now from here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to sit up into a lunge position, but in order to do this, I got to readjust the back foot, so I'm going to sweep it back, readjust the legs. So now from here, I've got a nice bottom lunge position. The free arm will be outside of the body to kind of counterbalance. Now from here, same thing. Shoulders nice and set, long open neck position, eyes pointed straight ahead, and I'm going to drive up into the fixation position. To go down, you're going to reverse the movement exactly as you came up, step back under control, drop down. From the lunge position, this is usually where I'll transition the head. Up until this position, we were always looking up at the kettlebell. Once I get to this position, that's where I transition to the eyes and head looking straight ahead. But now as I'm going to go down, I'm going to tuck the back foot. I'm going to bring my eyes to the kettlebell. I'm going to fold at the hips, find the ground. From this position, I'm going to draw the back leg forward, sit the hips down on the ground with the shoulders away from the ears. Find the ground with the elbow, slide my body under control till I'm in that bottom position. One hand over the other, lower down, and roll to your side. That's the get up from top.
All right. So there's quite a lot of steps there in between, and just orientating your body, figuring out when to tense, when not to tense, kind of which primary mover we're trying to focus on at that point. So lots of steps in between there to break down, and that was great and detailed description. So hopefully you guys can work on that, and we'll just keep moving with this series. Thanks, Mike.
You got it.